I'm going to do this morning and the night to try and put an end till it just. It's such a huge subject that you really just have to stop somewhere. But I want to go in some more detail this morning with that. I called it the trauma effect, or the effect that trauma has on individuals that will produce something later in your life. The trauma you walk through, you go through. Sometimes it's 6 weeks later. Sometimes it's 6 years later. Sometimes it's 20 years later. But all of a sudden something appears in your life and you wonder why. And many times it's directly related to the things that happened to you. Let me give this a scripture in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 10. I'll read it. We started with this the last times. But in Philippians 1 and verse 10 it says that you may prove the things that are excellent and that you be sincere. And then this word, without offense. Never, ever, ever allow yourself to become offended. Never. For no reason. No exceptions. The day you become offended, you're now on death row. Because you have opened the door to a sickness or an illness that will get you. It will catch up on you. Jesus warned about it. He said about unforgiveness, don't hold it. Don't hold grudges. Don't do it. Get it out of your system as fast as you can. I've learned in my job, you can be offended real easy with the way people think, the way people says with the emails. I've learned to laugh it off. I've learned to laugh as I threw it in the bin. I've learned to smile and go on. Sometimes it hurt and you had to pull the knife out of your back, but you smiled and went on. Don't hold grudges. If you do, you will open the door to some serious, serious calamities in your life. He says, be without offense. Be filled with the fruits of righteousness, which are by Jesus Christ unto the glory and praise of God. Now, he said this, I really want you to understand. There's something I need you to know, brethren. He's not talking to sinners. He's talking to the church. He says, there's really something I need you to understand. This is why I'm preaching this. I want to bring you understanding. There's something you need to understand, that the things that happened unto me, the things that happened unto me, the King James has said, the fallen out, rather. My translation, the Joe Corry translation, simply means that it turned round. God was able to turn it. He was able to flick the coin. He was able to swap it round and turn it. Instead of being to my detriment, instead of being disastrous to me, God managed to turn it because he never kept offense. Because he learned how to smile and go on. How to get over things real quick, that it had no hold on him, it couldn't get a grip on him. The things that happened unto me, and last week we did 2 episodes. I was preaching last night in Donahue, and I was teaching on the same subject. And when I read the scripture, I saw this. And even when I came back home, it was still going through my mind. I want to tell it to you. The things that happened unto me, those are the things that caused the problems to him. It wasn't the things that he did. All right, now understand that's not what he said. He didn't say the things that I did, God was able to turn them around. No. The things that we did, you did a lot. Look at somebody and say, I know. You did a lot. But we got a God in heaven who sent his son to die for us, and the blood of Jesus Christ cleanses us from all sin. So no matter whatever you did, how many times you did it, and where you did it, and who with, it's irrelevant now. It's under the blood. Look at somebody and say, it's under the blood. So it can no longer affect me. That's not what he's saying. He didn't say the things that I did. He said the things that happened unto me. Most of them things you had no control over. You never asked for it. You didn't put your hand out and say, goody, me next. You never asked for that to happen to you, but it did. The rape, the abuse, the divorce, the separation, the madness, the insanity, the things that happened to you, you had no control over it. You were just thrown into it. Somebody did it to you. Something happened, an accident, something took place. The things that happened to you. I got it last night after preaching. I got it myself. I saw it. It's not the things that I did that caused the problems. It's the things that happened to me that opens the door to calamity in my life. And I understood that for the first, after all these years, not the things I did, but the things that happened to me. We understand this, and we know that our emotions are connected, directly connected to the sicknesses that come into our life. Our body has a way of responding to crisis and to situations with emotions. And if you don't learn how to bring your emotions under control, you will find you'll deal with recurrent illnesses and sickness all the day of your life, because according to your emotions, there is certain chemicals released in your body. The emotion of fear, when it kicks in, if you were walking down the street and a pit bull terrier suddenly came out with not a smile on his face, but a growl, and it's looking at you, there's this thing, emotion inside you called fear. And the second the fear kicks off, your body responds to the emotion. It's not responding to the pit bull. It really doesn't care what the situation is. It's not responding to what. It is responding to your emotions. And when your emotion of fear kicks in, it releases adrenaline. Your adrenaline will suddenly make you fully alert. Your hearing is exaggerated. Your eyesight becomes focused and intense. Your heart rate begins to come up, and your muscles suddenly have power they never had before. And you can do a 4-minute mile in less than 3 seconds to get away from that rascal, because your body, you've got an adrenal gland and you've got a pituitary gland, and that's working in your gut and in your stomach, and is crunching up your beef burgers and doing it's supposed to work. But whenever an emotion kicks in, it diverts its attention from your blood supply and goes right to where the action's at, into your adrenal gland and into your pituitary gland, and begins to pump chemicals into your body in seconds that will cause you to be almost superhuman. You could run, you could get out of it. The fact of it is, the more traumatic, the more emotion behind it. When it's all over, your hands are shaking. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Your hands are shaking. You can hardly talk. Your knees are trembling. You get somebody walks out of a car accident. They can't hardly talk. Been through an explosion. They can't. Their hands are shaking. They go to hand you the keys of the car. They can't. If they're being stalked and chased, or somebody trying to rape them or whatever, and they're running to their car door, you said, "Get into the car." They can't even get the key into the car. Their hands are shaking. Their legs are trembling, because there's this rush of chemical going on the inside of them to supernaturally protect you. God built it in to do it, and this chemical is not reacting because it's a pit bull, because it's a stalker. It is reacting to your emotion. You need to understand that. You really need to understand that. And prolonged activities, like under situations of deep stress, to live under stress, it means that chemical is being pumped on a consistent basis, and instead of helping you now, it's working in reverse against you, and it will cause serious problems somewhere down the road. So let me give it to you again. Think about it, understand it. Your body's not responding to it. Your body is responding to your emotions. And whatever emotion it is, that's what chemical is being released. So if you live under stress, or in a very stressful marriage, a stressful situation, or running around depressed all the time, or in rage, fits of rage, every time you rage, it's an emotion. When you get into that rage, you know you're releasing chemicals. When you have a confrontation, after you've got in somebody's face, your hands are shaking, your knees are shaking. Sometimes you're disorientated and confused because chemicals are running mad on the inside of you. Prolonged activity like that is a nightmare for you. You do not understand what damage you're doing. So again, your body, your chemicals is not released because of a situation. It's released because of an emotion. And here's what I found in my research. Arguing with a teenager. Wow. Look at somebody say, wow. Have you ever argued with a teenager? Sometimes you're better locking yourself in the car and screaming, because it does just as much good as trying to argue with a teenager. You know what they say about the chemicals that released in arguing with a teenager is exactly the same amount of chemical that's released in a car accident. Wow. Look at somebody say, I'm not arguing with you anymore. Here's another one, arguing with your spouse. If you haven't got a spouse, then you won't know what I'm talking about. But if you're married any more than 5 minutes, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. But when you argue, and I'm not talking about having a little discussion, everybody reacts different. I'm one of those people that's all vision and no sound. You know what I am once? Everybody reacts. I find it better because if I start to talk, I would have an adrenaline rush. Why don't you get out and say something? Because if it did, I wouldn't be able to get back into the car. I'd be shaking and trembling. So just let me sit here and keep smiling. That means I'll live long. Look at somebody say, you'll live long, Joe. That's right. I learned a long time ago, keep your cool at all costs. When you let loose, when you let rip, adrenaline's pumping. You got acids pumping through your body. And arguing with a teenager, arguing with a spouse, living under stress. They say teachers have the most stressful situation every time they go into a classroom nowadays. They're living under that pressure. That pressure will get to you. That pressure has an emotion. The emotion is releasing the chemicals that's doing you major damage. It's melting you on the inside. I gotta get through this. I'm excited. But it's reaction. It's your body reacting to whatever it is. The chemical release is done there. And so we experience then, because we experience emotions, then we got to be, we do experience emotions all the time. Like weddings. We cry at weddings. Does anybody here cry at weddings? I cry at weddings. I have a nightmare when I'm doing the vows. When the bride walks in, I don't care who she is. When she walks in, there's this lump comes in my throat. My lip starts to tremble a little bit. Absolutely. Now I've learned how to talk to the groom and make fun of it, but I'm ready to burst into tears. Absolutely. And funerals, I have a problem doing funerals because I want to go and sit with the mourners and sit and wail with them. I can't help it. I'm an emotional being, so I've had to learn how to walk around. But we have emotional releases all the time. Our hands shake when we do speeches. Our heart races when we argue, and it's making a chemical release on the inside of us. In fact, if we took it to the extreme now, and you lived on an edge, if you lived on the edge where you're under such stress, where you're living in that place where you're releasing chemicals, a stress situation all the time, you can come to a place where your immune system begins to overwork. And when it gets overworked, it can get jammed and override. So your immune system now is pumping out all types of chemicals, thinking that it's warding off stuff because of the emotions that you're going through, and it begins to work against you. It now not goes out to kill bad cells, but it kills good cells also. It's called autoimmune system. Autoimmune diseases, such like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. Have you ever heard of those diseases, lupus? They are diseases where your body's working against itself. Your immune system that's up there to help you is jammed on full expression, releasing adrenaline all the time, and it's working against you, and it literally will kill you. Now, the first signs of all this taking place on the inside, there's 3 layers. The first layer is real simple. What you know your body's beginning to react to circumstances is you just feel terrible. I was going to say you look terrible, but we'll just keep smiling and moving on. Where you feel run down. Have you ever felt run down? Felt run over? Have you ever felt run down? You got the runny nose. You just feel tired and you feel exhausted and you want to sleep all the time when there's really no reason for it. That's the entry level that your body now has had too much adrenaline pumping through, too much stress, too much emotion, and it's beginning to react on the first level. If you come to first level 1, that's the entry level. The top end of that level is this. You start to reach for the settler's tums. And this stomach acid begins to get you, and then you have to cut back on curries, and you no longer can eat raw onions and you can't even eat chocolate because you go to bed and you're racked with heartburn. And look at somebody saying, I know what he's saying. You're not level 1, but that's the upper end. That's the top end. You go to a doctor with that symptoms, the first thing he'll say, are you living in stresses at the minute? Have you something going on that's worrying about you? Because he knows that's level 1. He knows there's an emotion in there has triggered this thing off. Your acid problem, your digestive tract's not working. Your bowels are now giving you a problem. And now you've got the first sign of high blood pressure. And it all became in because you're over-emotional. Your emotions has released chemicals that's now working against you. They say even skin disease. People that have skin disease, it's because they say when the skin breaks out like that, it's you're weeping through your skin is the way that they say it. You're weeping through your skin. In other words, there's times you should have been broken down and cried, but you didn't. You repressed it. You held it in, and it's in there, and it has to come out somewhere, and it comes out in skin diseases. When my mum passed away, my mum went on to heaven. Just after that, several weeks after that, I began to break out in skin irritations on my legs. And it dawned, I realized exactly what it is. I maybe didn't cry as much as I should. Maybe there were, you have to cry. Look at somebody say it's okay to cry. And cry is a major release for you. It is a major, major release. And maybe I didn't cry as much as I should have cried. I don't know. But there was a reaction in my body to it. There's always a reaction, and you've got to watch it. But when you know what's happening, you can deal with stuff and you can fix it. But let me tell you what I've read and what I've studied about this, about repression, holding back tears and holding back grief and holding back angers, especially in two areas. One is grief, and the other is heartbreak. Heartaches. You know when somebody breaks your heart? And it results in aches and pains in your joints, pains in your wrists, pains in your fingers. It always does. But here's what scientists said. Scientists have said that you can really die from the trauma of losing a loved one. You can literally die listen to this. Here's what they said. Grief doubles the risk of suffering a heart attack or suffering a stroke. This is what they say when somebody's close to you, when somebody dies. You can literally die because of the effects of trauma. It doubles the risk now. It doubles the risk of heart attack and suffering stroke. This is what they said. We often use the term a broken heart to signify the pain of losing a loved one. Our studies have showed that bereavement can have a direct effect on the health of the heart. There is evidence from other studies, that bereavement and grief can lead to a range of adverse responses in your body. Blood clotting. Your blood, something goes wrong with your blood when you go through these emotional high places in your life. Blood pressure goes up, stress hormone level goes up, and your heart rate control goes out of control. Bereavement has long been known in the medical profession as having a risk factor for death attached to it. Isn't that major? Because that's one of the most heightened emotional things that we can ever go through. If you don't learn how to get a hold of grief, grief will get a hold of you. I talked these things over with a nurse one time that I was teaching on these subjects. She came after me. She says, I've been a nurse for 40 years. She says, I can tell you what you're saying, son, is correct. She said, I began to notice that when I was a young nurse. And she said, I started to take some notes. And she says, 12 people that I nursed in particular in the hospital I was in, every one of them took serious illness within 2 to 5 years of divorce. Within 2 to 5 years of divorce. She said, I saw serious illness come place. And she says, 9 of them actually died. There was a patient I was in charge of. She says, I began to just say, well, you know what's in common denominator? And divorce was one of the killers. 9 out of 12 died within 2 to 5 years of going through the emotion of divorce. Let me level something else up with it. We're getting into another avenue now. Divorce and bankruptcy. Divorce and bankruptcy carries the same emotional weight and will result in the same sickness problems. And here's another one, the death of a child. There's 3 of them, divorce, bankruptcy, and the death of a child. All results in a serious increase within several years, serious increase of heart attacks, stroke, now listen to this, recurrence of cancer. Now listen, nobody asked the child to die. Nobody asked for you to be divorced. They come home and said, I don't love you anymore. They're gone. The emotion that kicked in, the things that happened to me, the things that happened, I never asked for this, but the things that I didn't ask for the child to die. The child died. Now the things that happened to me has now caused a response on the inside of me. They said within 2 to 5 years, heart attacks, recurrence of cancer. See, when we're dealing with sick people and people that's got these things, there's a reason that sickness is there. There's a reason it can come back unless you know what you're doing with a reoccurrence of cancer. Autoimmune diseases, serious crippling diseases and debilitating diseases also. The things that people have said to you can cause the same response. When they take the ring off and set it down and say, I don't love you. Sometimes they don't, not man or woman enough to tell you, looking in your face and say it. They just walk and leave you. They don't understand the devastation. They don't understand the devastation to the person and to the children. The backstabbing. Have you ever been backstabbed? Is anybody ever betrayed you? It carries the same emotion. It carries the same weight. You didn't ask to be backstabbed. You didn't ask to be betrayed. It's the things that happen to you. Mocked and laughed at and jeered and bullied. They carry one common thing called heartbreak. People that's gone through what we call a broken heart has really no immune system. It's like chemotherapy. You get chemotherapy, it destroys your immune system straight away. And so does brokenheartedness. It wipes it puts a major crack down your immune system. Your immune system is no longer operating at 100%, and you're wide open now for whatever's moving in the arena. I read somewhere one time that every person fights cancer 200 times in their lifetime. If your immune system is intact, or at least 95% intact, it will kill that cancer and you'll never even know you had it. But if your immune system's down the day it comes a-calling, you got a problem because you've nothing to fight it. When chemotherapy destroys your immune system, what happens is secondaries come because you don't have an immune system to fight it anymore, and you got a problem. That's why you need to become a Christian, a born-again believer, and get the promises of God up and get the shield back up again. Speak to your immune system every day and tell it to be well and fully intact, so no matter what comes, you can beat it, you can fight it. Emotional problems, back problems. Oh, my back. Doctors who specialize in backache, here's what they say. 88%, that's a lot of folks, 88% of back, neck, and shoulder problems do not result from injury, but a result from stress and emotional upheaval. Now you're afraid to say, I have a sore back. Now you're afraid to say, oh, my shoulders hurt. Now you're afraid to do it. 88% of people who goes to the doctors with a back problem, the doctor knows this information. It's not the result, well, I fell off a horse 17 years ago. It's nothing to do with it. No, 88% of back, neck, and shoulder aches, joint problems, aches, results not in injuries, but comes from stress and emotional upheaval. Lauren, I know this. Many years ago, we have to watch what you say because we're on YouTube and everybody watches nowadays. But we know a man years ago when he was just a young man, a great man in the kingdom of God. He was doing conferences. He was doing all types of stuff. But he married, and he married the wrong person. Saddest thing. He married the wrong person. They could not get along, man. They fought tooth and nail and tooth. Whatever was his hand, it was used at the time. It was a living nightmare. None of the two was smiling. They were broken. They're unbelievable. Even the pastor went and said to him, this is not working. Why don't you just go different ways for your health's sake? He wouldn't listen. You know that man who was a strong, healthy young lad, his health started to go down. And he ended up with a back problem. And we hadn't seen him for several years. And I came back to the church where he was, and there he was on a walking stick. When the prayer line, he came hobbling. He was like an old man, bent over and hobbling up. I said, what is wrong with you? You know, he had been a farmer, and I thought maybe he had fell off a tractor or a trailer. He said, I don't know. He said, this back pain just come in, and he said, I can't get rid of it. The doctors can't get rid of it. I've had surgery. I've had rods put up my spine. And he said, I can't get rid of it. I can't get rid of it at all. It was later when I was finding, checking this out, I understood exactly what was going through that man. There's no doctor can cure him because it's not a medical deal. It's an emotional triggered one that after, when you know that, you can get them healed, but not at the time. So stage 1 carries all that. Stage 2 it becomes a little bit more heightened, a little more hyper, and a lot of people I know live up in this area, and this is where you end up with recurring diseases. In this arena, when you're up in the level 2 now, you didn't do anything about the first level, didn't know to do it, didn't handle it, didn't get it sorted, so you live up in level 2. That is where you live with the same reoccurring illness. It goes away a week, and here it comes again, same emotional problems, same distress problems, same thing, the same cycle. And including this, you're now looking at this in stage 2, where you have chronic illness, where it's not just a little ingrowing toenail anymore, but this is serious. Chronic illness, you're at stage 2. We haven't time at this study to go through it. We may deal with that tonight. Stage 3 is worse. Stage 3 now is where you're going to need surgery, and it even is a place where it causes death. And it went through stage 1, stage 2, but we didn't deal with it back here, and now it's looking at us straight in the eye. In John 5:5, it said Jesus speaking, there was a certain man there at this pool. He said he had an infirmity. And remember, he spoke to a spirit of infirmity, a woman, and cast it out. For he said this man had the same spirit of infirmity 38 years. That's a long time. And when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time, he said to the man, he said, will you be made whole? That's a statement. Will you be made whole? We'll look into that one tonight. Most people don't even know what that means. We'll open that to you tonight. Will you be made whole? And the impotent man said, sir, I have no man, and when the water's troubled, to put me down into that pool. And when I'm coming down, another one always steps in before me. And Jesus said unto him, rise, take up your bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole. Everybody shout, whole. Oh, I'd like to go into that now, but I don't have time. The man was made whole. It doesn't say he was healed. No, it said he was made complete. He was made whole. And he took up his bed. He took his bed on his head, and he began to walk. And the same day was the Sabbath. Afterwards, Jesus finds him in the temple. It didn't say Jesus bumped into him or just happened to be on the same, but Jesus found him. He went looking for him. He healed him in the crowd. And then he said, wait a minute, there's something I need to add this. So he went looking for him. He caught up with him afterwards, and he said, I've something else to tell you, son. I've something else to say. And he said, behold, you're now made whole. You're now complete. Your emotions is back on track. Your spirit man's on track. And your body's made right again. You're complete. He said, you're made whole. He said, now go and sin no more. Don't do whatever you were doing, don't do that anymore. He's been lying at the side of a pool for 38 years. I mean, the man's not gambling. He's not running out at nights. So for 38 years, whatever way he's been thinking, whatever way he's been talking, whatever emotions he's carrying, Jesus said to him, I don't want you to think that way. I don't want you to behave that way anymore. He said, you need to stop doing what you're doing, lest worse comes upon you. Did you get a hold of it? I need to tell you this morning, you need to stop thinking. You need to stop getting emotional. You need to get a hold. Look at somebody say, get a grip of yourself. Go and preach and tell them. You've wanted to say that for ages now. Get a grip. Quit squealing, quit yelling. Well, you don't understand. Oh, I don't know. I understand this. I can hear you because you have my ear pierced, but I know this. I know this. The only person you're damaging is you, and it's eating you alive on the inside. Get a grip. So let me deal with this. Are we doing okay? For those that's still awake, hold on another 10 minutes, but this is most important. We're dealing now with this trauma. I watched 9/11. Do you remember 9/11? I watched it. The world watched 9/11. I watched this after at Mumbai. I remember with the terrorist attack in India and the shoppings. You remember all that stuff? We've watched that over the years. And I remember watching it on television, and the cameras went in on some of the survivors. And they were disorientated. The camera said, what happened? They couldn't even tell you, blah, blah, blah. Their adrenaline's pumping. They didn't know what to say. They were totally disorientated. And I looked at them that day, and I said, it's not now's your problem. It's a year from now. It's 2 years from now. The trauma that you're suffering right now won't show up for 12 months. But when it does, you got major tragedies, major crises ahead for you. I brought this up a minute ago, but divorce affects the person. It affects the children. Unless Jesus Christ gets in and strikes that down for you, you will have major crisis right behind. Another one that I touched on and I need to spend a bit more time on right now is called bereavement and grief. They have very strong emotions, especially those who's been with somebody who had sudden deaths. Sudden deaths. You know, there's a response. Some people have a response where they hate God. The people, the survivors, the widower, and they respond that they shake an angry fist at God. There's nobody in their right mind would do that. Which simply tells you they're not in the right mind. There's an emotion hit at that second of time. That trauma hit in, and it's now got into confusion. And their thoughts really aren't their thoughts. The enemy's at work. And they'll actually sit and they'll blame God, and they'll hate God. They will hate God. Some will actually hate the person that just died, and they'll scream. I've heard them do it, hanging over the coffin and shouting, why did you leave me? Hey, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't their fault. But you do not understand the heightened emotion. What people say is what people do, and the trigger effect that's going on the inside. Some goes the opposite way, and they hold it all in. I got something to deal with tonight, and we'll deal with the aggressive side, the hostility side. But this morning is this, we hold it in. And you have seen it, and I have seen it, and thank God for it. But when a sickness and disease, in fact, there's a funeral today at 2 o'clock, and a pastor from Lurgan who passed away just a few days ago. Sylvia will be at that funeral. Noel McKinley. Noel McKinley. I don't know if anybody knew Noel. Noel buries the day in the afternoon at 2 o'clock in, where is that? Donaghcloney Methodist. He buries the dead. Wonderful man. We used to have doors here to lead you in this way. Noel came out and moved the doors to the side. He was a missionary. Was in and out of Spain all the time, in and out of Ireland, but he went home to be with the Lord. And here's what happens many, many times for the bereaved family. We call it this way. They say they're able to hold up. So you can go to the wake and drink tea, and they're smiling. They're talking about how great a man he was, and it's like they're immune to the dead person's here, and they're immune to it. And it's your body. It's working for you. It is released some chemicals in the inside, and it almost blocks the pain. It blocks the trauma. It just blocks it out for you, and it's on a holding session to enable you to get through for a moment or two until your emotions catch up. Because if your emotions let loose at that point, you'll say things and you'll do things. It'll cause problems. So your body begins into a mode that's able to help you. And after a while, when it's got, then the grief comes. The grief comes and we cry and we go through all that emotion, which is good. It's a release. Some people don't. Some people, they get over that bit and then they deny. The next they go through denial and they go through the whole thing and they never grieve, and then they've got major emotional problems, major mental problems. They can't hold relationships. They become very unstable, and there's major sickness comes right behind it because they didn't cry, they didn't grieve, they didn't mourn. Here's another thing kicks in with it: abortion. We're about to find this. People in this island signed agreements, said, I go ahead. And they had parties and barbecues to celebrate the fact they were going to legalize abortions. They don't know what they're signing. It's not the abortion's murder for a start, but apart from that, it's the girl who got it. The emotion that she'll go through is unbelievable. Not at that moment, but give it a year or give it to... Somebody asked me about that after the whole sign and said, what do you think? I said, it's not what I think right now. I said, ask me in 2 years what I think. I think because I'm going to be busier in 2 years' time than I ever was before because of the trauma that women's now going to put themselves through, and they'll end up in crisis mode 2 years from now. And in the body of Christ, you will have to go and set them free from the pain and the suffering of it. I had to pray with a young man one time who his mother took him to one side. I don't think she meant to hurt him, but she said to him, you are not supposed to be alive. She said, I went to have an abortion. Said something went wrong and they didn't abort you. She said, but you laughed and said you were supposed to be aborted. That went into that fella's thinking till he couldn't think right. He was having nightmares. I had to pray with that guy to get him set free from that. Because those things, abortion, unwanted pregnancy carries the same emotion. I know they say, well, this is the wrong time. I got bills to pay. I got that, so I really don't want to. They don't understand this is a real human in here. And that baby feels emotion. That baby has to live. When all them chemicals release, that baby's swimming and it's living. And it has an effect upon mother and the baby. Cot deaths. I'm sorry I have to bring this up, but I need to roll it out because that's how people, Laura and I have to deal with people who's been through these things. If you want to set them free, you've got to know what happened. But there's cot deaths, stillborns, premature births, long, hard labors. All them has a traumatic effect on a woman that will transfer down to a child. And either the both will suffer later or else one of the two. Sometimes it comes out on the child, and we'll deal with that in just a minute. Long, hard labors or premature death of an unborn. Those are terrible, terrible things. But they have a release on the inside, an emotion release on the inside of a woman that takes her forever to get over. And sometimes they don't. And sometimes cancers can be released through that. It's just unbelievable what triggers. The baby, just remember this, that baby is not just something in there. It's a live human being. And it feels strong emotions of the mom. I've dealt with children, Tyler's age, some is her age. Some is Gracie's age, can't sleep at night, has all types of asthma, all types of problems. And it stems back from what happened when they were in there. The suffering. If there's a traumatic pregnancy, Laura and I have always listened to the mother saying, oh, it was terrible, it's terrible. All pregnancies is terrible. I understand. I've never actually been there, but I'm reminded on a constant basis. I've hurt my finger to say it's nothing like the pain of pregnancy. Well, I understand. I wouldn't try to judge my pain in the finger to your pregnancy. I wouldn't try to judge that at all, not making light of it. But it is traumatic. But there's some births is more traumatic than others. And Lorna has learned this over the years, that if you don't pray over that child and release that child from the trauma, that child will end up asthmatic. That child will end up serious bronchial problems all the days of his life. It may have emotional problems. It's just unbelievable. A traumatic delivery. If you've had children had a good delivery, thank God for it. Even if it's cesarean, thank God for it. But there's other deliveries that's more traumatic, and that can give an indent into a woman that also causes a major upset in the children. There's people and they say, well, I don't want this child, and they'll talk to cesarean, and it's like the child's not here, and I don't want this. Why is this thing born, and all the rest of it? And it's just unbelievable. It causes damage on the unborn child. Now, I read this results one time. I couldn't figure out who actually did this study, but they did it. 20 babies were separated at birth from their mothers. Now, I told you a story last week about a woman in south of Ireland, some like 50 odd years ago, and the mother was in deep depression, so they took the child off her, and she had no contact with the mother for 13 weeks. And she ended up, after 8 years of age, taking panic attacks, bedwetting, nightmare, and had to be set free at 8 years of age. Unbelievable. But the 20 babies that were recorded that were separated at birth with no human contact, all died. All died. And it was stated, all died for the lack of love. Because babies, like humans, needs to be touched and needs to be hugged. Look at somebody, say, I need a hug. I need a hug. Go ahead, Robert. Go ahead, Robert. Take your liberty there. Take your liberty. That's right. That's right. That's it. Everybody needs hugs. Look at somebody, say, I do. I need a hug. I need a hug. I need a hug. You need hugged. You need to feel loved. If you're living with people and they're just nasty, 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 find somebody out there that will say good things about you. You need loved. Look at somebody, say, I need loved. Babies need to feel secure. They need to feel secure. There's kids, and all they do is cry, cry, cry. All they do is they can't eat right, they don't feed. They got a problem. They got a problem, and it can be resolved. But there's diseases that gets a hold of the babies. Let me tell you, even this, and I noted this, and I wrote this down for you. When the mothers have had tragedies at birth, and stillborns or something, or cot deaths or something related to that, the next child is born. The next child is born. If the mother's still grieving when she conceives, there's all types of stuff going on inside that mom, and that child arrives into that. That child will have problems, and here's where they say the three areas. Bronchial problems, digestive problems, that's either bowel problems or serious stomach problems, and allergies. So you take somebody that's got one of those three, you probably find it's something to do with the way they were born, the tragedy of birth. And many times it's just nailed. Because the mother had their mother had a cot death, a stillborn or whatever. Now they were born in a time of grief, and it showed up in them. Now they have got asthmas, they got bronchial problems, they got digestive problems, they got allergy problems. Stems from there. Once you know it, you can break it. You can lay hands on somebody and cancel the assignment and get them healed real quick. Let me get into this for a few minutes. Okay, for a few minutes more? I know, Joe, just take your liberty. It's Sunday morning. The accidents and incidents. And every time we've seen an accident, Laura and I has looked at each other as much as to say we need to pray for that person now. Not for the injury now, but for the trauma they've just walked through, that it be no more diseases. It is known after accidents and incidents that the risk of heart attacks, heart failure now goes up dramatically. It never happens right there and then. It's usually 6 weeks or 6 months or a year later. Suddenly it kicks in. They've never had a heart problem. Suddenly they got ticker problems. It came right from there. Chronic respiratory diseases suddenly arrive because of trauma. Asthmas. If you got asthma when you're a child, it usually grow out of it by the time you're 7. Are you with me? It grow out by the time you're 7. If the asthma started because of an accident, then they'll tell you it won't leave you. You'll be sucking on the inhalers all the days of your life. It won't leave. Because it come in because of a trauma, because of emotion, it'll leave in Jesus' name. Everybody shout in Jesus' name. The accidents, the moment they break down your immune system, they go for your nervous disorder, deaf disorders, and for mental problems. I've got to finish on this morning. We'll leave it. There's plenty to be thinking about. We're going to deal with a different avenue in about, but I'm going to end making this statement. The most damaging emotions that stem from trauma. Here's the most damaging emotions. If you've got these going on the inside of you, do something about them fast. because you're hurting yourself. Rage or anger. I'm not angry. Oh, okay. You ever meet somebody, you know almost afraid to talk to them because you don't ever going to smile or take a bite out of you. Yeah, you ever know anybody that can't? Good night. Isn't it awful? Isn't it terrible? I actually doubt it. There's a spirit behind it. And this man's wife said to me, could you come and deliver my husband? I said, what for? He says he's got this terrible rage problem. I said, well, he's just maybe a bit uptight at the moment. She says he's not uptight. Says he just blows into her rage. His daddy was the same. Says we go to his house on Sunday. Next thing the two of them put the dinner table plates down and they're wrestling on the floor, beating the head of each other. Just a rage. Somebody else says something and they get up and beat each other. I said, are you kidding me? She said, she says, if you don't come and deliver him, he'll probably kill me. I laughed. She said, this is not a laughing matter, Joe Corry. She said, here's how it come to head. She said, he said to me, you drive the car. I said, I'm really tired. I don't want to drive the car. The children's in the back. He said, you drive the car. She said, I'll drive the car. She's driving the car and he says, go faster, go faster. She said, look, the kids are in the back. There's 11. She says, go faster. And says, I'm coming up in the corner. And he said to her, overtake. She says, I'm on a corner. He said, overtake. She says, I'm on a corner. She says, you know the sunscreen, you know the sun visor that you pull down to protect? He said he pulled that down with such force, he ripped it off. And he starts beating the dice with the thing. He says, I said overtake. She says, I overtook and prayed that nothing else was coming around the corner. She said, you need to come and pray with him. I said, I'm not sure if I need to be there. I'm going to send Jimmy Parks. Jimmy Parks, you're going. Well, I did go. I was well covered, to tell you, the day I went there. He was a pleasant gentleman, but then you never know when the sudden attack would take place. So he didn't say anything that would trigger the deal off, but I sat with him and his wife in the kitchen, in the living room, and we had a nice conversation. And then she said, you need to deal with him. He's a bad man. And I looked and said, are you? He said, I am a bad man. I wanted to say, I still like Laura's look at me. I think I got to go pick the kids up from school now. But I sat on for a minute or two and I said to her, I said, is your children in the house? And she said, they are. I said, well, would you mind taking them out the back and playing with them for a little while? I need to talk to your husband. And I thought, just in case I come rolling through the window, there's no use of upsetting the children. Just in case I start to scream at this point, there's no use of upsetting us all. I'll be enough upset for the rest of us. So his wife went out into the back and I said, you have a problem. He said, I have a problem. I said, it sounds like you got a demon spirit. He says, I have a demon spirit. I says, I'm going to get that rascal out of you. He says, you can try. I knew we were in for fun at that point, so I didn't waste any time. I just got up and got a hold of him by the ears. So as he couldn't get away from me, and I started on that rascal. And he spit and he slobbered and he cursed and he swore. His mom was supposed to be a Christian, but he was coming out with some choice language. And he spit and he swore, but he never touched me. I bound it that it couldn't hurt or it couldn't harm, but man, he went on for a while. And then all of a sudden it left. It said some things on the way out, but it left and he got set free. Rage and anger, you don't look at that. Look at somebody say, you need to see the pastor afterwards. Laura's in a good mood. She'll deal with you. Anybody rage or anger? Laura's sat over the head, man. She'll deal with that there this morning. Lock the doors. Rage and anger. Unforgiveness. There's only a few of them and then we're finished this morning. Unforgiveness. Please, 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 please don't hold unforgiveness. Listen, if you had cancer today and I came to visit you in the hospital, even if you were a stranger, I'd pull the curtains round that nobody else is there and I'd ask you a simple question. Do you have anything against another human being? Because if you told me you had, you told me you will not settle it, I won't pray with you because there's no use praying. You got to get the junk out. The junk got it in. If you want it out, you got to solve that issue. Unforgiveness. It's not worth it, believe you me. Unforgiveness. Depression. Depression is a serious emotion that will invite a spirit, and you don't really need that, so get rid of that depression. Worry. Quit worrying. Worrying will bring you right into anxieties, and anxieties will cause the adrenaline to pump. It's an emotion. Once the adrenaline pumps, you're now on a downward slope. It'll melt your bones. If you were to take a glass of that adrenaline and put a thigh bone into it, I don't know why you'd want to do it, and I don't even know where you'd get a thigh bone. You'd have to go to the butcher and say, have you got a thigh bone handy? I don't know. But if you put it in, I'll tell you, you come back, that thigh bone's almost gone. It's pure acid, and it's running on the inside of you. It's melting your bones. You got brittle bones today? You got emotional problems. Worry, frustration. Frustration will eat you alive. Quit being frustrated. Quit worrying. Give it to God. Walk on. Keep worshiping Him. Fear. I got to deal with this one tonight. They say there's 1,400 chemicals, different chemicals released inside your body when you're living in fear. And it's working against you. And grief. You've got to cry. You've got to mourn. I tell you, when I go, everybody cry together. I say, well, miss that guy. We'll probably sell more CDs when I'm gone than I do when I'm alive. There'll be a major demand for the book. Oh, we knew him. They knew him. Nobody wants to come on a Sunday, but see, when you die, the place will pack. Everybody, I want to sign the memorial stone somewhere. I knew him, I knew him, I knew him. You're never a hero till you're gone. There's no living heroes. You got to be dead, and then everybody likes you. I understand that. I understand. But when I die, let me tell you, let's make it plain here. Everybody cry. Everybody cry together. But don't cry forever. Don't cry forever. You just cry and let everybody know you're feeling the emotion of it, and then get up and get on with life. Get up and get on with life. Please don't let the grief eat you like candle wax melting. Please don't let it. It's not worth it. And the last one is guilt. Never, ever, ever, as a born-again believer, never allow guilt to get inside your thinking, not for 2 seconds. You are a born-again believer, washed in the blood of the Lamb. There's no sin, there's no iniquity you have ever done or will ever do. That Jesus Christ, the blood of Jesus is still flowing, still giving forgiveness. There's no reason to feel guilty. If you did something, look at somebody and say, you did it, you did it. If you did something, get forgiveness. If the devil turns around and says, just say, that's right, I'm forgiven, I'm forgiven. You're forgiven. Look at somebody and say, I'm forgiven. If you're forgiven, there's no need to feel guilt. Laura and I deal with prayer lines all the time with people who feel guilt, something they did, something they done or whatever. Get yourself free from that fast. It's killing you. I've got to pray with people this morning for 10 minutes. We'll do a 10-minute prayer line. We've got to get you free. We've got to get you loosed from this. I'm telling you this morning, this thing is necessary. If we don't, we're going to be dealing with sicknesses and diseases in this place. I don't really want the healing ministry. I want people free. I want people in a better way of going. If I can teach you this stuff, you can get going after it. I won't ask you what it is. I won't ask you what the problem is. I won't ask you where it stemmed from. You recognize it's something, that's good enough for me. If you come, let me lay hands on you. If it's such a decision that we maybe need a healing, then Laura will be with me and she can lay hands on for a healing there afterwards. But let me break that. Just settle it. That's nothing to do with me anymore. The blood of Jesus has cleansed me. Let's settle it. Let's get over it. Let's move on. And don't let that in there. Don't let whatever's still in there surface. Don't let it. Get it stopped, and get it stopped this morning in Jesus' name. If I've said anything along that there, and it's you, then you need to be in this prayer line. I promise you, I won't ask you where, what, and how. I'm not asking. It's none of my business. I'm simply going to break that from off you this morning, that we can get on with life and get on with life in abundance. Did that apply to anybody this morning, or was it just a teaching? Come up.